Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Free Thought Forum. I'll be your host today. My name is Brian Fields, and I'm joined by Jen Flora. And we have an interesting show for you tonight. First, I think we're going to cover some current events as they've been going on. Jen, you want to?
Yep, we have some current events, and I just want to remind everybody, first of all, that you hear something, you want to call in and express your opinion about it, you're more than welcome. The number's on the screen. It's 717-846-5067, so give us a call. And as many of you may know, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, Obama came out in support of same-sex marriages. This was no doubt in response to something the vice president had said. Wasn't that what happened?
Yeah, the vice president made an announcement on a news program that he had supported gay marriage, and then he said later on he said in a statement that his views weren't necessarily the views of the whole party, that it was his own personal viewpoint. But then President Obama
came out, yep.
Very surprisingly, no one really expected that. He came out with, I would say, unequivocal support of gay marriage. And on the heels of that announcement, this came up earlier this week. A North Carolina pastor called for the death of gays and lesbians by trapping them inside an electric fence. So he essentially said that the government should build a great big large fence, in his words, 150 or 100 mile long, put all the lesbians in there and do the same thing for the queers and the homosexuals, and have that fence electrified so they can't get out. So, and he was making this comment right after the president made his announcement. He was attempting to admonish President Obama for his statements. It's
That's an amazing thing to say to, not even a congregation, but then for it to get out. And I can't imagine how he would think that gays and lesbians are just the only people that, cause more gays and lesbians. That's not really how it works.
Well, again, this is coming from the pulpit, and it's right on the tail of earlier this month when a pastor in North Carolina suggested that parents should beat their children if they display homosexual tendencies. And this is both North Carolina, which is interesting. But I find it surprising that, they record their sermons. They make them, you would think, this is an honest representation of what these people think. And it's, in this day and age, it's surprising that people there were some protests over the Fayetteville incident, the beating their children, but you would think that people would be shocked and outraged over this. But it hits it hits YouTube, it gets out on the internet, and it hits, the liberal blogosphere, and everybody talks about how crazy that is. But churches are continually silent when their co-pastors say things like this. You'd think if they really wanted to make any pretense to ethics, that they would stand at the pulpit and say, you know what? No, really, this is wrong. We know this is wrong. I'm sorry,
Yeah, at least say something instead of endorsing some of the violence that seems to be that they're endorsing.
Right.
It's just, and on the heels of that story, many of you may remember about 2 years ago in 2010, the young man that at Rutgers University, he was gay, and his roommate taped him and displayed it on the internet. Due to the humiliation, he went and jumped off a bridge. And the young man, Rave, I think I'm saying his name right, Rave, was sentenced to 30 days in prison. He was given 300 hours and $10,000 to assist in biased crime, which a lot of people are outraged about that his prison term was so small. Now, a lot of people came out and said, no, we don't want him to have 10 years, which was the max he could get. No, we don't want him to be deported because he's originally from India. That those don't really support don't support the crime, but we would like to see some kind of justice. And so a lot of people feel that wasn't justice for them.
Right.
And it really is a shame that this young man, I mean, I can see being humiliated because what's going privately in the bedroom was displayed. But moreover, it's really sad that this young man had to feel so humiliated because he was gay. That's just wrong.
Well, I mean, you consider if anybody spied on somebody else and videotaped what was going on in the bedroom and then shared that with the public, that is a crime. I mean, it's not something that deserves a slap on the wrist and walk away. I mean, you expect a certain amount of privacy, and you know, on the one hand, religious people will say, well, we don't want it under our nose. We want everything that stays in the bedroom or that happens in the bedroom to stay in the bedroom. Just don't tell us if you're gay. You know, you hear all those equivocations about, you know, what might be okay or what might not be okay, but it comes down to, well, they think gay people are icky, you know, and therefore it's okay to treat them as second-class citizens, you know, and that's ridiculous.
Right, and you are correct. The biggest problem is a lot of people did focus on the fact that he was gay, and not enough was focused on the invasion of privacy. I mean, what kind of laws and what kind of punishments should be given out just for that alone? That invasion, that was, you know, in one of the most intimate rooms that you might consider, you know. I think that was not the best of sentences. And again, you may disagree, and if you do or if you don't, give us a call, 717-846-5067. We want to hear from you. I want to know what you think. And many of you may not know, getting off the gay topic for a minute, that the Kansas City governor passed a bill, and that bill states that any pharmacist or doctor may refuse to give you any medication that they feel may induce or may cause the termination of a pregnancy. And many people feel that that is going to lead into them refusing to give birth control. And it also may cause women who may be in small towns, who may not have access to a lot, they might not be able to get the birth control they need, and they feel that this is just going to create a lot more problems. And who knows, it could be one of those laws that goes on the book, and 10 years later people say, that was a law? And no one really knows about it, you know?
Right.
So who knows what's going to happen with that, but this governor has expressed that he does not like abortion, and he has already made a lot of legislation against it to make it harder and harder in Kansas to get an abortion. And again, this abortion is going to fall under a topic of morality. We'd like to know if you can be good without a God. So, and that is one topic that always comes up with, can you be good without a God? What is abortion? Where does that fall into the mix?
Well, they just to step back to the gay thing, there was another bit earlier this month. There were a lesbian who sought a North Carolina marriage license with her partner was rejected under the state law, and as after they refused to leave the government office, they were turned away and then arrested for their protest. North Carolina has had a lot of interesting things going on lately.
Well, North Carolina was the one that they stated they had a vote not to allow same-sex marriage, correct?
That is correct, and that's part of why it feeds into, you know, there's a lot of people, of course, who are protesting, who are not happy about that law, and but it's also feeding a lot of the religious fervor as well. And I think it lends validation to this idea that it's okay to treat gay people badly or differently than straight.
And I think with all this going on in North Carolina, with all this going on with Obama's statement, and all this, it's all being brought out. I hear a lot of people with many different, well, we shouldn't allow gay marriage because what about the population? What's going to happen to the population? Well, at 7 billion, I think we're going to be okay. I think we're going to survive.
I doubt there's a whole lot of gay people out there having babies with straight people just because they can't have gay marriage. I mean, people are having babies because they want to have babies, or for whatever reasons they can have babies, and people who don't want to have babies don't have babies. And when push comes to shove, gay marriage isn't going to have any effect on that. That's just a ridiculous statement to make.
I agree. And there's, I'm trying to think of some of the other reasons that they give to be non-supportive of gay marriage, and of course, the big one is it's immoral. And so, of course, if you want to live peacefully and lovingly with somebody, that's considered immoral. But we can.
Well, it's interesting that gay people do live together. They get into an apartment. They get an apartment. They raise a family. They love each other. But for some reason, calling that marriage, religious people seem to think that it takes away from the idea of what marriage is. I mean, consider that in the Bible, of course, marriage was a man and a woman, or a man and 100 women, or a man and several women and concubines, and a man and various other possibilities. But man and a man, oh no, the world will come to an end, or a woman and a woman.
And it may cause polygamy to start up again too. That is an argument that they're making, that it's immoral, so it's going to lead to other immoral acts, which polygamy is considered an immoral act, even though it's in the Bible and it was okay there. But that's another thing that they're bringing up to try to make sure that same-sex marriage does not get passed in any state that is currently not passed in.
Well, and here's another one, back on the birth control thing. Catholic organizations sue government over health care. The Catholic Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. joined a bunch of other organizations to sue the United States government over the new health care law mandating them to provide employees with access to contraception. Now, they're not saying that employers should have the right to choose what health care they provide to their employees, which I think is a specious argument to begin with. They're saying because we're a religious organization, we shouldn't be required to go against our religious conscience to give women contraception. Now, this is a complicated. I mean, what they want to do is they want to say, well, because we're a religious institution, we should be able to tell our employees what services their insurance company will give them. And it's entirely backwards from, I think, the intent of the First Amendment. The First Amendment's intent is to provide individuals with their own freedom. And I think that would say, if they wanted to say, well, we want to offer our Catholic employees the option to get reduced fees by not having to pay for contraception coverage, well, that might be okay. But the idea that we're going to say no for everyone, whether you're Catholic, whether you're atheist, whether you're some other flavor of Christian, we're going to say no. And the funny part is, I think it's like 90% of Catholics support the idea of contraception. It's not in the Bible to say you can't have contraception. There's a few verses you might say, well, that could lead to the idea that you shouldn't have contraception, but there's nothing that directly says, well, you can't prevent pregnancy, and
I have spoken to a great many of Christian women who have told me, oh no, I definitely support birth control because I wouldn't want that person to get pregnant and have an abortion. And that's one of their biggest reasons. They wholeheartedly support birth control for that reason.
Right. I mean, that's the best way to reduce abortions, is to stop people from getting pregnant in the first place. Why is that not obvious?
Yeah. And all these, you see all these people picketing Planned Parenthood. Well, Planned Parenthood, they provide a lot of services to women to, number one, help women have healthy pregnancies if that's what they want, and help women prevent pregnancy so they don't have to get an abortion. Their main source of income, or their main, what they do, isn't abortion. That's a very, very small percentage.
Well, my personal opinion that is that, the Catholic Church for a long time. Have you ever heard of the Quiverful movement?
Oh, yes.
It's essentially a Christian movement, not Catholic, but a Christian movement to spread Christianity by pumping out babies, essentially.
Create soldiers for God.
Create soldiers for God. But I think the Catholic Church has kind of had that idea all along, that the best way to propagate the Catholic Church is to make sure you have lots of children. And they do, in fact, have lots of children. And get them all to be Catholic, because that way the Catholic Church will grow the most. The Catholic Church does not evangelize like other groups do. They don't set out to convert people to Catholicism, at least not anymore. And so for them, this is their last stand to keep from dying.
Yes, it is.
Because the bottom line is they are shrinking. In nearly every country in the world, the Catholic Church is shrinking in population. They're losing their priests, they're losing their nuns, they're losing their congregation. It is a dying, archaic organization, but they can make a lot of noise. And the disturbing part is that they are they are definitely overrepresented on the Supreme Court. And when they do things like sue the government over health care, guess who's going to be hearing the case if it goes to the Supreme Court? A court that is majority Catholic. And so that is the scary thing.
It is scary, and yet I have seen many court cases go up against religious judges.
Oh, sure.
That justice prevailed in.
Well, sure.
And I'm sure that the religious don't think justice prevailed, but they did uphold the law. And that is what we have to hope for when you make it to the Supreme Court. We do have to hope that you take your religious beliefs and you put them on the shelf and you follow the Constitution and the laws of America.
Definitely a hope.
And it does make me nervous that something like that would even go through. And somewhere along the line we'll be paying for that, and our health care will keep going up because of all these lawsuits.
Right.
Associated with health care. And what do you think about all this? Again, give us a call, 717-846-5067. If you want to mention something that we've already discussed, feel free to. And there was a prominent atheist out there that put forth a challenge. And I'd like to put forth that challenge as well. It is, name something a Christian can do that an atheist can't do. I don't know if you know who that atheist was that put forth that challenge.
Well, I think it was named something that is intrinsically good or intrinsic.
It is about morality.
Right.
It is.
Name something that is ethical, that is considered ethical, widely considered ethical, that a religious person is capable of doing that an atheist is not capable of doing solely because of religion.
Right.
And the reason for the challenge is to show that atheists are good people. We live, we love, we have consciences, we contribute to charitable causes, we do all these things that religious people do. But the religious people don't do these things because they're religious. They do these things because they are human beings. And human beings care about other human beings. It's in our very nature to care about other human beings, for the most part.
We're more social. We're more a social creature, social animal, if you will, than most others. So we do seek out people. We do seek out love from other people and kindness and things like that. So can you do it? Can you be good without a God? Let us know. 717-846-5067. I did have a friend tell me, well, I'm not an atheist. I think she's probably more agnostic by some of the things she says to me. But she says, I'm not an atheist. But if I were, my morals wouldn't change. There'd be nothing different about me. My morals aren't set by some authoritative figure.
Right.
Is basically what she was trying to say.
I generally present to Christians, the idea, look, if today you were convinced that God doesn't exist, would that cause you to go out and rob a bank or go on a murder spree or anything like that? The answer is no, you wouldn't, or at least most of you wouldn't. There might be a few, but, that they would be outliers on a bell curve. But for the most part, human beings treat each other at least as good as we would expect to be treated. We have an inborn sense of justice, what we find to be right and wrong. And we don't like when we observe bad things happen or things that are against what we've established as a moral code. Now, there are some things we might disagree on. We might disagree on abortion. We might disagree on gay rights. We talked a lot about that today.
Right, exactly.
But, if you make your argument for abortion or against gay rights from a religious standpoint, you have not made a rational argument. You need to be able to make your argument from a reasonable standpoint, from a reasoned standpoint. And if you can't, then we're not going to take you seriously. But we can make rational arguments for treating each other well, for loving each other, for caring for each other, for contributing to charity. There's plenty of rational arguments for doing that. But if you can't make a rational argument for your ethics, then you haven't thought about your ethics. Your ethics are based on, for a Christian, on texts that are nearly 2,000 years old. And I say nearly 2,000 years old because they weren't written down until well after the death of Jesus Christ had existed at all. So your ethics are based on essentially, I guess that would be probably Iron Age ethics.
Yeah, and you have to consider as well.
Or is it classical? It's classical age.
Yeah. Well, you have to consider the doctor, the nurse, the EMT, some healthcare professional that is saving your life at this moment or has saved your life could very well have been an atheist. And according to their moral code, they are going to do everything possible, not because they took some oath or anything like that. They want to do everything possible to save your life. That's why they got into that profession. It is not because they want to go out and be immoral to you or do anything else. That is part of their moral code, to save your life.
Well, imagine what this world would be like if the only reason anybody ever did good things is because their religious code said so. I mean, imagine if the people who didn't believe as you did could be expected to be criminal, to do horrible things. I mean, that's not the world we have. And imagine, when you look at the Bible, you see things like how the Bible talks about slavery and the treatment of women and things like that. And you say, I don't find that to be ethical. Many Christians even say, I don't find that to be ethical. But it's in the text that it is an ethical thing. It's what was supported in the Bible. So when you say, I derive my ethics from my religion, I have to say, well, which religion is that? Because your religion teaches some things that you find to be intrinsically unethical. So therefore, how can you derive your ethics from religion? And I would say that you do derive your ethics from humanistic concerns. And we can find common ground in that.
And well, let's look back in the Bible and give an example of something that today we consider immoral, and that would be for a woman to have to marry her rapist.
Exactly.
We consider rape immoral. We would consider the woman having to marry the rapist immoral. Many people were probably, if you ever heard of the story, there was a woman who committed suicide. She had to marry her rapist. I don't remember what country it was in. I will have to look it up.
It was one of the Islamic countries.
Yes, and she had to marry her rapist, and she did end up committing suicide. And I can't imagine what she had. I think she lived with him for quite a few years. I can't imagine what she went through or had to go through for all that time. And many of us would say, well, that's immoral. I would never do that. I would never want my daughter to do that.
Right. I mean, these same people would be saying, put the rapist in jail.
Absolutely.
And, don't treat people. You don't treat people like that.
So where do you get your moral code? Where does your morality come from? Let us know. It's 717-846-5067. Are you ready to take our challenge to name something ethically, correct?
Yes.
That a religious person, Christian, can do that an atheist cannot do. Take our challenge and let us know. I think a lot of the stuff that is going on, that a lot of the stories we've reported today are just, based on moral issues. For example, the right to privacy. I mean, that is a moral issue. I would never consider taping somebody and displaying it against, and not even saying to them, hey, look, I taped this. Do you want me to display it on my Facebook? It's so cute. I would never consider doing that unless that person said, okay, go ahead.
Well, imagine, if you will, someone taped, your son or daughter or brother or sister or someone you care about having sex with someone and then putting it out on the internet just to make them look bad. I mean, that's what you've got here. And so, and I think what's unfortunate is when you say, well, it was a gay couple, that people look at that as less of an infraction, that, it's reasonable to out this gay person because gay is bad,
Right.
And I think that is, I mean, when you talk about ethics, you have to, be able to put yourself in that person's shoes. And if that person's a little different than you, then you have to make an analogy to put yourself in that person's shoes. And if you do that and you're abhorred by the implications, then you should be abhorred by the original act.
Exactly. And I do find it hard to believe that we have to cover this issue so much. I mean, the biggest thing I hear against atheism is that we would have no morals. There'd be no one to watch over us and make sure that we're doing things correctly. But why, as a society, do we need a figure to watch over us and make sure we're doing things correctly? We have displayed that we are capable of doing that. We are capable of keeping each other in check to make sure that everybody's rights are not infringed upon.
Right. Yeah, my brain just blanked. I was going to say about the ethics. Yeah, all right. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, do we need this father figure to tell us what is moral? I mean, and I think, what is it? Is it 4 of the 10 commandments that have nothing to do with anything moral?
If you actually cut it down, I mean, you could argue some of them, like honor thy father and thy mother. Well, unless your mother's a crack whore. There's all kinds of things where you could come up with. I mean, the 10 Commandments are if you wanted to say, well, they apply to all circumstances that's outlined in the verse, you would be able to argue that most of them are unethical. The only ones that have any real ethics maybe are, don't kill and don't steal.
Right.
But even then, the religious exemption has always been don't kill and don't steal from anybody that's not your neighbor. And a lot of people nowadays equivocate that to mean, well, neighbor means anybody in the world. But that clearly wasn't what was meant in the Bible. They meant your tribe, your country, your neighborhood, the people that you were raised with the same ethics that you were raised with. And that's played out in the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament, over and over and over again. So, as far as, but yeah, 3 of them are about God and whether you should treat God good or not. Then you've got, thou shalt not covet property, including your neighbor's wife. It's not, the idea isn't, well, you shouldn't commit adultery. The idea is you should not covet your neighbor's property, including your neighbor's wife. Your neighbor's wife and your neighbor's ass are in the same line.
Yeah.
But take that as you will. But still, there's plenty to point at in the 10 Commandments that is unethical. Even, the ethic, well, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Well, unless everybody in the world is exactly the same, most people don't like necessarily to be treated exactly the way you like to be treated.
Well,
the ethical statement would be do unto others as they would have you treat them. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. Because there is, now when you reach the morality issue, you reach objective morality, which is just, it's either right or wrong, and subjective morality.
Right.
Where something that may be right to me may not necessarily be good for you.
Right.
And that doesn't make it something that's going to hurt me or you,
Right.
And, for example, abortion, if you do not support abortion, that's fine. That's okay. That is your right to do that.
Don't have an abortion.
Don't have an abortion, exactly. However, if I say, you know what, I can't do this. I can't have a baby right now. I don't want it to do what it's going to do to my body. I don't know what's going to happen. Will I be alive after it's all done? I think I better make my decision to have an abortion. That would be my right. And that is a morally right choice for me, but it's not for you. And that's okay.
Right.
So, and that would fall more so under subjective morality.
Well, I think, I don't know if it's really that subjective. I mean, it really, there are certainly some ethical principles that, are not universal because a God says so, but universal because, we understand, having studied how people treat each other, that there is some optimal way to treat other people as far as, whether it's okay to commit genocide or, there are things that are, with very, very, very few exceptions, immoral or moral. You know what I mean? But yeah, you still, if you were to come up with some objective rule set, it would be a very, very, very thick volume. Because people are different and you have to kind of understand how to get along with other people. There are always outliers to, the human experience. When you look at a population, sociopathic tendencies, things like that, people who just do things that are not ideal for the group. They don't contribute to society in a positive way. But for the most part, we know how to treat each other, and it's just taking into account what's reasonable for how somebody would want to be treated, and the balance, the give and take in that relationship.
And we've been doing very good as a society, the sociologists and psychologists coming forth with information on why people may act a certain way, how we can help them so they can make better choices. We've come a long way as a society to be able to help more people so that they are going to go out if they do have trouble. Maybe they had a rough upbringing and don't understand they don't understand there's a line that needs to be drawn. They don't understand how to treat people because they were never treated very well. And we, as a society, have grown to say, hey, now we know what to do. Now we know how to help these people so that they can become productive members of society.
Right. I think that as human beings, it's, we have an intrinsic right to how we treat ourselves, what we do for ourselves, what we do for our bodies. Our body is this is our universal playground that we get to do whatever we want with in the world, But where rules need to come into play is how we interact with each other and how we treat each other. And that, I think, is the core to morality. I mean, morality isn't you telling me what I can do with my body. Morality is you telling me what I can do to other people.
Exactly. So what do you think? Again, we have that challenge set out. We have the number. I don't know if it's up on the screen right now, but it is 717-846-5067, and you are more than welcome to call and let us know what you think. Do you think you can be good without a God? Do you think people need a God? Did they need a God at one point or another?
Call that number right there.
And in case you can't see it, again, 717-846-5067. It's a pretty hot topic to discuss morality and how you see morality. What do you think is good? What do you think is right in society? Do you think there's rules that society hasn't stated that we should? I think that many of the laws that we have as a society are good. We abhor rape, we abhor murder, we abhor stealing, invasion of privacy. We do not accept these as moral or good for anyone in society. And I personally don't think that anybody needs a father figure to tell them what is moral or good. Of course, we expect that we're going to learn a little bit from our parents about certain aspects of morality, what's good and what's right for us to do.
Well, fathers raise children. So if you need a father figure, then that's saying that you're a child. And when you come to be an adult, it is, commonly understood that you're supposed to know the difference between how you should treat people and how you shouldn't treat people. So what do you need a God for at that point?
And that's what we need to know from you. 717-846-5067. So didn't you have another story? Something going on in Tennessee that was happening that I think goes very well with our topic right now.
Yeah, Tennessee's had an interesting run too. I mean, we were picking on North Carolina a little bit, but
and Kansas.
And Kansas,
yes.
You're right. But Tennessee's state legislature back in March, they passed a bill that essentially inserts creationism and climate science denial into the public school classrooms. And then a week before that, on March 19th, they passed a bill to permit the display of 10 Commandments in public buildings. And they're currently debating a bill that's intended to give schoolyard bullies an exemption from the law if their bullying happens to be motivated by sincerely held religious beliefs. So that's right. If you offend someone because their God has told them that they should be offended by you, that it's okay for them to bully you.
now when you really think about that story, you're pitting the gods against each other. Allah against Buddha against the Jewish God. they're all at war now.
Well, I mean, what does that mean? Well, first, obviously that is supposed to give a free ride to picking on somebody for their being gay, because being gay is against some religions' beliefs. But, that can extend also to a Muslim kid or a Jewish kid or even some flavors of Christianity and their children just being something other than what is the accepted norm.
Just not sharing the religious belief that is shared by the bully.
I read a story, I don't have the details on this one, but I read a story a few months ago about this this person who was being picked on because oh yeah, I'm blanking again.
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry. Well, there was the one with the mother and the kid who took a taser to class. What happened was, I think this was in Florida, where this child was being bullied in school, and the mother gave them a taser essentially to protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably not the smartest move to take a taser to school. But given that the school has essentially told this kid, well, if you didn't, because they were gay and they were transvestite. And so told this kid that if you didn't look different and didn't act different than the other children, well, they wouldn't pick on you. And so the mother kind of felt that there was no protection for the kid.
Right, and I guess, she went to the last resort.
Essentially, yeah. And so the kid took the taser to school and was then surrounded by 6 kids who were going to beat the crap out of him. So he pulled this taser out, raised it up in the air, and it was one of the ones that has the prongs on it, so the electricity goes between the prongs. It wasn't one of the projecting ones. So he just raised it in the air and went like this with it to fire it off to show that he had it, and they left. And so the kid was then expelled for having a weapon in school. And then all the statements in the press from the school were essentially, well, if he didn't act differently.
Right, and how is that treating our youngsters to be themselves and to feel comfortable with that?
Right.
It's either you conform to society or you're nothing. And that is not promoting individuality.
It's not promoting a safe school environment either. I mean, you've essentially said that it's okay if kids beat up on other kids. And, they make the arguments about, well, it's a hazing thing. You have to learn how to get along with each other, and this is how kids figure out the pecking order. And it's these ridiculous arguments. This idea that, school is a jungle and it's survival of the fittest. And, look, just because Darwin pointed out that survival of the fittest is one of the mechanisms by which evolution propagates itself does not make it morally ideal.
Right. It's not a moral code to live by.
Right.
We do need to step in and we do need to help.
Yeah. In philosophy, they talk about something called the is-ought question, and that is, just you can make descriptive statements that say, well, this is the way things are. And then you can make what is moral conjecture statements that say, well, this is the way things ought to be. And these are two different questions. So if I make a statement that says, in the wild, survival of the fittest is the mechanism by which evolution propagates itself, that does not mean I'm saying, well, we ought to promote the idea of survival of the fittest as an evolutionary mechanism. We don't say, well, that's how we want to treat each other. We evaluate the environment around us and figure out our own way. We're conscious beings able to use reason and rationality to evaluate the world around us. And when we have that, then we have a responsibility, and that's the ought. We have a responsibility to make the decisions that best suit us as a species, and that's how we come up with our own morality.
Exactly. And so what, what would some of our callers, what would they like to do? What would they like to see happen with this certain case in Florida, with this kid bringing a weapon to school, not firing it at anybody, and it's a taser, so it's not going to, or really shouldn't kill you.
It's interesting. You see. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's okay.
The police in the you see multiple instances of the police using tasers, and the excuse is that tasers are non-lethal, so the police can use them essentially as deterrent devices, and they have done it all over the country. And so it seems to be a specious argument when they say, well, it's a weapon, and it's the same thing as bringing a .45 to school, or bringing and in a situation where the school itself isn't doing what it needs to do to protect their students,
Right. I mean, when 6 kids are about ready to gang up on one child, that does not seem like a fair fight to me.
No.
And someone needs to be out there to protect that one person from the 6 others. And if no one's going to be there, then they are going to have to make decisions to protect themselves.
Right. And when the teachers and the school environment, they haven't been, either it hasn't been made clear to them, or they haven't been taught that, we have to treat our students like human beings, and the way we do that is by protecting them, and to insist that they treat each other, with at least a modicum of respect. That when they look to their Bible and their Bible says, well, this kid is doing something that's immoral, so it's okay to let that kid be treated like that. It's wrong. It's ethically wrong.
Right. And I think that was one of the points we were trying to bring up, that maybe we shouldn't be looking to just the Bible to tell us what is moral in this society. We need to look within ourselves. And I think once we start doing that more and more, we will find that a lot more people will be supportive of basic human rights for everybody.
Right.
And that's not a place we're at right now. And it's clear by many of the news articles that we've been reading. However, there is one story that came out that may be morally good, who knows? It was in the York Daily Record. That's where I found it. It's about the Army. They want to start opening up more combat jobs to women.
Excellent.
They feel that in the wars in Afghanistan, women were fighting alongside men. So this is something that they need to start doing. So they are testing this out to have women join more combat groups. And they are also considering opening up the Rangers, which is more of a special combat unit in the Army, to women. So this might, give I think this is a step forward.
Right.
In the military.
In the military, there are standards by which already that you are supposed to be fit or not fit for duty. And, whether you can run so far or do so many pull-ups or shoot so well. And, it's interesting. It's fascinating that in the 21st century, that apparently one of those requirements is having a penis.
That is shocking.
I know. And so I think it's a little heartening and a little disturbing that it's taken so long, but a little heartening that they realize that really, look, I don't care what job you're being hired for. I don't care if it's the Army, if it's for whatever. The only requirement for hiring somebody for a job is that they should be able to fill the duties of that job.
Exactly.
And
it shouldn't matter what race, what creed, what sex, what religious affiliation. anything. None of that should matter. Can you do the job?
Right.
If you can, then you need to be on the list of considerates.
Yes. And so that's a very good thing.
Yes, I was, I mean, that was good to read about. It was a little article in New York Daily Record, so I kind of would have liked to have seen it, be a little more introduced, but I did find it. So thank you for putting that article out there. And if you see an interesting article in the paper, of course, that has to do with one of our topics, give us a call, 717-846-5067. We'd love to hear from you, from your current events, and maybe how you feel about them. Another thing I noticed that came up, which has nothing to do with morality, but may provide a good feeling, is the jobless rate is going to keep falling. They feel it's going to be at 7.9% in the fourth quarter, and by the end of next year, be at 7.4%. So that's a good thing. Maybe more people having jobs will make them feel more important and less likely to go out and do something immoral because they don't know where else to turn. They don't know what else to do. What do we do now? I can't feed my family. I can't do this. Now what?
Right, exactly.
So that might help us in our society. I think that's a good thing. I read an article that many of the 2012 graduates should be able to find jobs. This is most of the graduating classes. They go out and they're underpaid. They're not finding jobs within their field. And it's looking like that might start changing as well.
That's great.
So that's good news for all of you in college. So that might make you feel pretty good.
I'm having some technical difficulties.
Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, the screen went dead.
Yep.
Oh, well.
It's rebooting.
Well, while we're going through these technical difficulties, of course, give us a call, 717-846-5067. We need to hear from you. And we want to know what is your moral code? How do you feel about morality? Do you think we need some authoritative figure that looks over us constantly to make sure that we're all being good? Or can you do it yourself? One of the things with morality is to do what's right when no one's watching. Can you do that?
Yeah, are you really a good person if what you're doing is just because some God told you to do it? I mean, if you look back to, if you have kids or when you were a kid, if you did what you were supposed to because your parents said that you were supposed to do it, was that anywhere near as an ethical thing to do as if you did it because you saw that it needed to be done and did it? I mean, you ask any parent who has kids, would you prefer your kid to actually do it just because they were supposed to do it? Or do you think that it's ethical because they did it just because you told them to? I mean, and then think about how that applies to you as an adult. Do you actively go through your life thinking, well, I'm not going to kill my neighbor today because that would be wrong and the Bible tells me so. And if you think that religion is the source of your ethics and is the only source of your ethics, I mean, really think what that means for you as a human being, what the consequences of that is.
Exactly, and here's in terms of killing your neighbor, I am not going to covet my neighbor's ass today. That might be, what are your thoughts? I mean, are your thoughts ethical, or are your thoughts unethical and you don't act on them because you know how to act in public? Your thoughts, sometimes your thoughts tell you one thing. Oh, my person made me so mad. I just want to punch him. How could he have said that? But yet, you don't, because you know it's wrong. You don't go up to someone and punch them just because they made you mad. But in your thoughts, in your head, it's a totally different story. Is that ethical? Is it ethical to be thinking like that? Or is it human nature?
Right.
you know. So, and that's another thing. Should we be telling our kids that if they're not good, they may meet a very fiery, disturbing end? Is that ethical? I mean, is that something that we want our kids to do, or do we want to instill that fear in them? Is that ethical? Is that moral? Is that good? Maybe less kids would be afraid of things if we weren't so dogmatic about telling them what's going to happen to them if they do something wrong.
Here's one. Trying to figure out where it is, though. Somewhere in the United States. Corona, California.
We haven't picked on California yet, so that's good.
Yeah, California's a new one. A boy 13 tortured and abused in front of his Bible study group. Essentially, this parent took this kid who they wanted to, be right with God for whatever reasons to a Bible study group connected with their church. And essentially, court allegations are that the pastor or the people, Nicholas J. Craig and Daryl D. Jeter and somebody, Remmers is the pastor, Lonnie Remmers. Police believe Remmers directed Craig and Jeter to scare the boy after his mother brought the boy to Remmers to be disciplined. They allege that on March 18th, Craig and Jeter took the unidentified boy to the desert, made him dig a grave, threw dirt on him, and hit him with a belt before returning to the group home and assaulting him there. And then they rubbed salt into the boy's wounds. And after the desert trip, one of the men had placed salt into the cuts on the boy's back. They could hear the boy screaming. The next day, he had blood all over the shower, that he had been stripped, bound to a chair, and sprayed with mace.
That sounds more like that's torture.
That's the headline.
Was that the headline? Torture? I didn't hear that.
Boy,
Oh my
13,
gosh.
tortured and abused in front of Bible study group.
Oh, I can't imagine that. I mean, that is horrible. Horrible story.
Yeah.
But we don't have a lot of time left, and there is a few announcements that we'd like to make. We do have a meeting coming up. We have some meetings coming up.
Yeah, we have several. We have a meeting here in York the first Saturday of June. We have our riverboat service.
That's going to be a lot of fun.
That's going to be on June 10th. If you'd like to join us, meet us at the Pride of the Susquehanna at 10 o'clock in the morning. The boat will board at 10:30 or so, and it'll take about an hour, and then we'll be back, and then we'll probably go to lunch as well. The Lemoyne meeting is the second Thursday of the month. All of our meetings are on our website, panonbelievers.org. It's up there on the screen right now.
Right. Harrisburg meeting, June 14th, I think it is.
Yeah, it's the second Thursday of the month.
Yep.
And we have our summer solstice picnic coming up next month. We'll have more about that in in June. It'll be June 30th, and we'll have details.
And if you need more details on all this, go to our website, please, and we have everything up there for you. Come join us. We'd love to meet you. We'd love to see you. Come to one of our meetings.
Or definitely come to the boat ride too. That's a free event. An hour out on the river. It should be beautiful, and would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and who doesn't want to go on a boat?
Yeah,
it's going to be an awesome adventure for all of us.
Well, I think we're getting close to our end here, so have a great evening, and join us in 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
3 weeks, yeah.
There's 5 weeks in May, and we'll be back the second Tuesday night of June.
And in the meantime, if you saw anything and want to make a comment on it, go to our Facebook. What was that, Facebook?
fb.com/Pennsylvania Nonbelievers, all spelled out.
Visit our Facebook page.
There you go. It's on the screen.